I'm recording on my new gimbal. How exciting is that? What is a gimbal, you ask? It's this little device that holds your phone and like it can actually follow your head around, even though I haven't quite figured out that function yet. I've actually only just figured out how to make it hold my phone. So I'm stoked, but I was filming something before and it just flopped over. So if Psych Chrissy's head just disappears off the screen for some ungodly reason, it's because the gimbal has decided to not cooperate with Psych Chrissy. So so bear with me on that. Hey everyone, hey Tara, thanks for watching tonight. Hey Caitlin. Psych Chrissy had a little bit of a rest last week and she bloody forgot to tell people. So poor Caitlin was waiting for Psych Chrissy for a while to come on for her Life Crusher Live, and then she was bitterly disappointed when she did not show up. So sorry, Caitlin. Hey, Charlie Bucket, thanks for joining Psych Chrissy Live tonight. I've got an awesome content area that I'm going to crack into, which is complaining. You know, we all hate it. But we all friggin' do it. Why do we do it? So Psych Chrissy's going to get into some of the mechanics of complaining and why the heck people do it, you know, and what's the function of it, and maybe some ways of trying to sort of get yourself out of that little habit, because it is a nasty little habit that generally does not help our situation in any way, shape or form. But we're all human, unfortunately, and we do get stuck in these nasty little habits. Hey, Rosemary, thanks for joining Life Crusher Live tonight. We're talking about complaints and how the heck do we, you know, stop that from happening. Lisa is in Cairns. Wow, I think I'll just pack up and leave right now. I'm still reminiscing on my my son last week. I was just loving life. Hey Ange, Psych Chrissy was letting the sun beat down on her, but also she was letting the bugs beat down on her. Look at my bites, guys. Ouch. Oh, my skin drives me nuts when I go to sort of tropical areas. So I've got a few issues with bites on my skin at the moment, a little Gold Coast hangover. Before we get into complaining, or not complaining, trying not to complain, we had some wins this week. Infinity Wellness Centre, you would have seen a post come up on the feed about the Sunbury Community Health Centre being able to offer mental health first aid training to the local sporting groups. So massive coup, really needed for the community. I love it, you know, because I did sit down with Sunbury Community Health Centre and try and contribute to a plan of how to address local suicides in the area. Sporting clubs were on my radar when I sat down with them, and I spoke about some of my concerns for the local community, and in particular local sporting clubs in my sights. So I was friggin' pumped when in my newsfeed I saw come up mental health first aid, community clubs, come at us, sporting clubs, sorry. And I'm like, yes, Sunbury Community Health Centre, that's exactly what you need to be doing. Let's engage the sporting clubs. So if you know somebody that is in charge or has some involvement with this sporting club or some say, you must get them to sign up or provide a delegate to these programs. It's a non-negotiable. I have told Sunbury Community Health Centre that I am more than happy to assist in making phone calls to the local sporting clubs to motivate, should we use the word motivate, them to provide delegates to this really worthwhile training that is so necessary for our local community. So if you know someone out there, make sure that they are providing the delegates if they are involved or somewhat connected to the local sporting clubs, because we need to get this across the local community. So I'm pumped. The other thing that's coming up is Psych Chrissy is going to be opening her can of whoop-ass in the next Mind Body Bootcamp that is kicking off next week. I'm freaking excited. If you want to come and work with me and Mel, who is our nutrition and food coach trainer, in just living an awesome life that's healthy and just motivated and nutritious and got diet and lifestyle and just killing it at life, come and work with myself and Mel in the next Mind Body Bootcamp. I've popped a link on this post. So yeah, come along and work with us. We're kicking off next week. And I do work on some of this stuff that, you know, I'm about to talk about, because complaining's got to be attached to everything that we do, pretty much to a certain degree. When we're facing challenges or emotional discomfort, sometimes the default way of response can be to complain. Why is that? You know, and I take a really adverse kind of approach to complaining, because it's just friggin' useless. It gets people absolutely nowhere, nada, gets people stuck, gets in the way of change, gets in the way of goals, gets in the way of people progressing in their lives, but they just keep friggin' doing it. Why? You know, and it's a rhetorical question that I'm asking here, because every one of us, you know, from time to time has fallen victim to the old complaint. So don't get me wrong. It is something that we all generally are trapped by sometimes, or at different stages of our lives, or in responses to different problems that we've got going on. Hey Amanda, hey Kim, hey Dave. Thanks for joining Psych Chrissy tonight on Life Crusher Live. She's back. She's crushing it. She's talking about complaining, because it's just one of those things that people get stuck in. It's a nasty habit that we tend to do. And what's the point of it? I would say the number one thing that I find people get stuck in complaining is because it's easy. How much easier is it to complain about something than it is to actually make some changes? It's so much easier, guys. I get it. I totally get it. And you know, in psychology land, you know, I'll have people that come to private practice and, you know, they'll want to, or we call it vent, you know, and there's also, you know, there is space for that. There is merit in being able to get things off your chest and, you know, and sort of get, I suppose, frustrations out and, you know, but complaining can become a habit where it actually locks people into a stuckness that they can't get out of. So people can become very complaints driven in their reaction to problem situations. It can become their first point of call. Unfortunately, it can become the way that they deal with problems in their life. And unfortunately, it can become this default position. It can be a very unhealthy way of dealing with problem situations that can stop people from progressing. So I'm not talking about complaining as having a bit of a vent or letting out frustrations or just needing to, I suppose, just express yourself in a way that makes you feel better. That's not what complaining's about. The complaining that I'm talking about is this circular driven process that kind of gets people nowhere. It gets in the way of people making changes in their life. It prevents progress. It stunts growth. And unfortunately, it becomes a habit that people get stuck in. Yep, that's right, Dave. As I sort of mentioned before, it becomes a habit. And a default way of doing things. That's when it becomes problematic. You know, I've spoken to you about negative Nancy's, you know, and a characteristic of a negative Nancy mindset is to get stuck in a complaints-driven approach. So it's all about, you know, well, I couldn't do this because this person did that, or, you know, this got in my way, or it's not fair that sort of this happened. A little bit like nagging, Amanda. Although nagging's more of that, directed approach towards somebody else. So that's more the persistent sort of, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you do this? That can be somewhat complaints driven, but also complaining is just that process that people can do, not compelling anyone else to sort of do anything about changing themselves or what they're doing. It can just be this circular process of someone going, oh, but I can't do this because, and I can't do that because, and excuse making comes into it. What else comes into it? Problem saturation comes into it. You guys have heard me present on problem focused thinking, just that inability for someone to have a look at what their options are and try and solution or find solutions or become solution focused in the way that they're looking at things. So complaints, I suppose, and that circular nature of the complaints process, people at times are looking for sympathy. That can be a motivation to complain. They're looking for supporters. So often when people are making a complaint, yes, my dog is complaining, Amanda. Oh, the dogs have been killing me tonight. I filmed a video. I'm trying to get ready for Mind Body Bootcamp. I'm trying to get all my weekly content done. And it was dog wars before, literally gimbals in the air. Dogs are fighting. It's just a nightmare in this office. Hey, Sarah. We're talking about complaints tonight. But yeah, the function of complaining is that it is easier. It is easier to complain than to actually do something about your situation. You do avoid emotional discomfort to a certain degree. There is some discomfort attached to complaining, but potentially not as much as if you really took action and you sprung into some form of planning and you really started to tackle problems head on. There's a high level of discomfort at times attached for that for some people. For myself, being in business, man, if I got stuck in complaining rather than action taking, I would not have a business right now, because seriously, the amount of problems that I face day to day in managing people and staff and issues, and man, I cannot be complaints driven, because if I was, I'd never get anything bloody done. So, I have to become very task focused in the way that I'm doing things. Part of my job as being a psychologist is trying to motivate people to become more sort of solution focused and task driven in the way that they approach problem situations, rather than just sitting in the complaints driven mentality. So it's very, very important that people do find the resource to overcome a complaints driven approach and then move forward. And like I said, I'm not totally against complaining. Sometimes, don't confuse complaining as feedback either. Sometimes when you have to provide someone with some feedback, that's not necessarily a complaint. That's very different. That's speaking up, it's identifying a problem and being willing maybe to work with someone on a solution. A complaint is circular. Often there's no point to it other than to just vent. And like I said, when it's destructive and when it's round and round in circles and the person is not really looking for answers or solutions, that's when complaining becomes problematic. I put a little quote on here because it's from my favourite man. As you know, my favourite man is Gary Vaynerchuk, a motivational speaker. He hates complaining. Like, he's so anti-complaint. It's not even funny. And he talks about complaining being a zero return on investment. So the amount of energy that people can put into complaining never really gets them a return. And it's funny because when you start weighing up that concept and you're like, okay, so if I'm really going to take stock of how much I've complained today and how much did I get back on that? Did I get answers? Did I get cooperation? Did I get people wanting to work with me? Did I get solutions? Did I get ways of trying to self-navigate? No. You do not get that return on complaining. So you've really got to look at that circular nature of complaining as just being a fruitless sort of exercise that, yeah, every now and again it's good to sort of get off your chest. But in the end, it's an unhelpful way of responding to a problem situation. And like I said before, people that often get stuck in complaints-driven sort of approaches, a lot of the time they're looking for people to jump on board. You know, they're looking for people to support that unhelpful sort of way of managing things so that potentially they don't have to do anything about it, that it just becomes this venting process where they don't actually have to engage in the uncomfortable action taking that might actually get them out of the problem situation. And it is this fine balance. It's like, you know, when you think in a rational way, and often we don't because we're quite emotional, and we go, all right, complaints, what's more uncomfortable, complaining or taking action? Some people rationally would go, oh, well, complaining's an absolute pain in the ass. When you think about it, you're probably not feeling really comfortable in complaint zone. Like when we think of it rationally, we might think of it like that, but we trick ourselves and we get stuck in complaining because it can be easier. And effectively, we are sort of sitting in a more avoidance discomfort zone when we are just complaining and not taking action. So even though our rational mind tells us that complaining is probably a really uncomfortable thing to do and it's not getting us anywhere, from an emotional standpoint, it's probably a lot easier for us to psychologically sit in that zone than it is for us to go, all right, shit, okay, we need to do something different. How are we going to do it? You know, how are we going to overcome the barriers? What do we need? You know, what do we need to do to make change? That stuff's kind of harder, 100%. There'll be probably a lot more emotional discomfort attached to the action taking than it is kind of sitting in the complaint zone. And that's why people get stuck, you know, in that mindset and that habit of complaining, in that habit of defaulting to complaining about something as their main way of coping with a situation. So, you know, when you see someone that habitually complains, I would say that they're probably being quite avoidant. They don't want to face the emotional discomfort attached to taking action or doing something different or trying to find a solution. So it's easier to sit in the complaint zone. So there we go, guys. There, I suppose, is Psych Chrissy's insights on habitual complaining or default complaining or using complaints as the main way that you respond to problem situations and why it can be so problematic. It's just an unhelpful way of trying to navigate problem situations in your life. So the challenge here, guys, hey Kirsty, welcome to Life Crusher Live. Psych Chrissy's going all pass on complaining. I hope you don't mind. What the hell? I think I'll leave that comment alone. Do we have a little sabotager on the Psych Chrissy broadcast tonight? I've heard it all, guys. I work in prisons, so. So I think that, you know, one of the things that I want to challenge you guys to do is the next time that you start to get stuck next time you guys start to get stuck in a complaints-driven zone, I really do want you to stand back and think, is this really helping my situation? Is this getting me to where I need to go? Is there a different mindset that I need to take on this that will effectively help me to get a better outcome? So I want you to call yourself out on your complaining, guys, and I want you to try and take a different approach to problem situations in your life. So have a think about it. Try and catch yourself out next time and try and do something differently than take a complaints-driven approach to situations. So there we go, guys. There's my Life Crusher Live. I hope it's been really helpful, and I look forward to catching up with all of you guys in the next coming days and maybe in the Mind Body Bootcamp. I would love to see you there. Mwah. Good night, guys.